Well, good afternoon, good evening, 5:14 p.m. my time, the 6th of May, a Tuesday. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. And I got a lot to cover today, and I've prepared a lot of material, and it's a furtherance of what we've been talking about and answering questions from previous podcasts, because remember, when we put the question out, the answer comes. You just have to be prepared to receive it. And I have to say, one of the advantages of living the way I live is that you don't miss too much coming in, because I'm not distracted, provided there's no high drama in my family. Slightly different camera angle today. I've brought some color back today, added the saturation back to the image, using the iPhone camera a little on an angle there. You can see my desk. This is the glorious piece of wood. You can't see it, but it's about 6 inches thick. It's about 180 pounds. Perfectly level on top of 2 concrete pillars. This is my beautiful man cave, my bodega. All right, so today we're going to try to answer some questions, and I'm going to title this Uniform Control Redux, R-E-D-U-X, Uniform Control. So if you, after you watch this, you can go back and watch the Uniform Control podcast, because they both go together. Now, it's a heavy show today, very heavy show. So I'm going to start with some lightness and come back and talk to you about it. The video of these kittens is for the Talamanca Review listener, Kitty. Sweetie, I don't want to bother you, Mummy, but I got to get the kittens here. Why don't you lie down when you feed? Okay, I'm going to leave you be, okay? I know I'm bothering you. 3rd day of motherhood, but this is like her, I think, her 3rd litter. And this is the other litter. You can see the 3 kittens much more clearly there. She decided to birth in an old washing machine we have here. And I don't like to bother them when they're feeding. The mothers get a little bit irritated, but there's my niece, Isabelita. Isabelita! Dice hello. My sister-in-law, her mother. Están bien. Her soul. Remember those kittens as we get into the podcast today. Whenever you feel you're in over your head, just remember those kittens. And I want to say to one particular listener, probably more, but this one reached out. Yeah, you probably are one of those souls I described, one of the Dolores Cannon souls, familiar and alien in your flesh. And if the world gets to be too much and you feel like crying, you should cry. Because for people like you in the world, those tears are like rain for a garden. Your tears are like that for the world and the state of human affairs. There's no mission to the life except existing and being and feeling it. And it's very tough, because the sensitivity you're coming in with is hard to deal with in this life. And there's, I think, other listeners of the Talamanca Review that are probably walk-in souls that were brought in to lift the planetary vibration at this time of transition. Now, with that said, the first thing I have to do is I have to play the Cynthia Crawford chapter from Stardust Ranch. It's about 16 minutes. It's pure audio. You're going to be missing this package of pure male sex symbol for 16 minutes for women over 84. And it's listen to everything, okay? Because there's a lot of stuff going on in here, and then I'm going to build on it. So I don't know where this cycle of podcasts came from. I don't know where they're coming from. I'm just in this inspiration zone now where stuff is just thrown at me. I go, yeah, that's a podcast. Yeah, I was just talking about that. And it all just goes together perfectly. It's a creative zone, I think, like Stan Lee and Frank Kirby at Marvel Comics in the 80s. But I'm in the zone and I'm going to keep doing these podcasts. So here's Monty Dean reading chapter 17 of Stardust Ranch.
Chapter 16. Visitors. If you've stayed with me so far in the story, I feel the need at this point to say, it gets weird. Sometime around the third week in July 2011, I received a phone call. If you've been listening to the story, you know a lot of people call me out of the blue. People who think they've been touched by God, people who think they've spoken to aliens themselves, people who believe themselves to be powerful clairvoyants or psychics, and many really are gifted seers. And just regular people who have heard about my story through the play it had gotten in the exopolitics arena. By this time, I had been out in the world almost a decade. Remember, when I started this story, I told you the most difficult part for me would be the timeline. I've been on this ranch since June 1st, 1996. A lot of things that I described in the early part of the book just kept repeating themselves. I didn't want to stress that too much. We were getting to this. But the abductions were quite constant. The markings on my body were quite consistent and, to be clear, I killed a lot of greys. I hated the little bastards. It was an acute sense of territory and defence of home and family, but that might be making excuses for myself. I don't have a lot of regrets about killing the greys. I don't kill them anymore. I had made my peace with the greys, or I was allowed to make my peace with the greys. Let me put it this way. Within all of us is a simple animal consciousness. Sufism talks about 7 souls: mineral, vegetable, animal, personal, human, and secret souls, and the secret of secrets. We all have an animal inside of us. Put your hand into a gopher hole sometime and see if you don't get bit. Same thing for a badger. Walk into a den of wolves and see what happens. A cave with a jaguar in it. Of course, I'm not really recommending you go out and do these things. I am, of course, just demonstrating the law of the home. Defending the home is a spiritual law to my sensibilities. Even insects have it. Go and kick around an anthill sometime. See if the ants don't bite you. So I'm not apologising for killing the greys. I am, however, saying that it was an expression of my animal soul, in the Sufi sense. The person who called me in mid-July of 2011 was a new kind of weird. She introduced herself as Dr. Brandy Howell. She told me that a third party had hired her to come out to my ranch and see if she could help me. She did not at the time say who the third party was. We talked for about 5 minutes. I gave anybody who called me a serious ear for at least 5 minutes. That's all the time I need to weed out the cranks. She called herself a doctor because she healed people and animals. She seemed to me the embodiment of everything that Arizona had come to represent in the flaky New Age world. It's probably best to let her website speak for her. It's called Night Star Life Awareness, and the landing page has the following introduction. Brandy L. Howell, D.D., traditional neuropath, life science practitioner, has over 30 years' experience in the study of alternative integrative healing. In March 1996, she received her Doctor of Neuropathy degree with high honours through the Clayton School of Natural Healing. In February 2002, she attained Doctor of Divinity and is an ordained minister. She is a Reiki master, teacher, animal intuitive, light worker, electromagnetic practitioner, certified organic consultant, and a licensed facilitator for Joyful Child, Inc. Dr. Howe's studies include herbology, pharmacology, nutrition, aromatherapy, iridology, homeopathy, polarity therapy, acupressure, kinesiology, reflexology, healing, vibrational therapies and remedies, animal communication, spiritual intuitive guidance, and bereavement assistance. We set the date for July 31st, 2011. Cynthia Crawford. The most curious thing about Brandy's call was who paid her. It was a woman by the name of Cynthia T. Crawford. In a world of strange tales, and the world of extraterrestrials is certainly a world of strange tales, Miss Crawford's is in the top 1%. She was born a fraternal twin, but she had a different blood and tissue type than her twin sister, and, unlike her twin sister, she was born without an amniotic sac. According to medical history, this is the first time that this has ever happened. It left the doctors more than a little bit confused, but that was not the first time that Cynthia Crawford would baffle and confuse people. It was in fact just the beginning of a lifetime of bafflement. To tell Cynthia's story, we have to go back to the very root of the modern exopolitics world. It begins in World War II. This is not to say that extraterrestrials have not been on this planet longer than that. They most certainly have, and they have influenced almost every aspect of human expression, but that's a story for a later chapter. Cynthia's father was a member of the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, the progenitor of the CIA. Our engagement with the Nazis is part of an untold story in world history. It's broken out in the world of UFO lore, but that doesn't mean it has mainstream acceptance. Much like Dr. John Mack trying to bring abductions to the world, mainstream academe has done very little to introduce the idea of extraterrestrials commingling and participating with the human race in major historical events. This is where researchers like Richard Dolan play such a strong role. His work on the exoteric aspect of the exopolitical world has been astounding, a breath of fresh air in an otherwise unprofessional and unstandardized world. The Nazis were so far ahead of the rest of the world, technologically, that they were even creating UFOs. They didn't dream these things up on their own. They had help from extraterrestrials. The story told by William Tompkins, a retired aviation executive and extraterrestrial familiar his whole life, affirms that the Nazi Party made an alliance with a group of Draco reptilians of the Draco star system. These are the reptilians that David Icke was laughed out of polite society for talking about in the mid-90s with his breakout book, The Biggest Secret. Icke is telling the truth. The Draco reptilians have played a huge role in human history for millennia. They are so integrated into human culture that we can hardly tell what's theirs and what's ours anymore, especially at the level of religions. We'll get more into the reptilians in a subsequent chapter. Undoubtedly, Crawford's father was privy to a lot of early UFO secrets when the Nazis folded up and went to Antarctica. They didn't actually lose the war. The Nazi Party is alive and well. The people they left behind were part of a distribution plan between Russia and the United States called Project Paperclip, which is actually referenced by name in the Hollywood movie Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Remember, it's been a military-industrial entertainment complex for some time. The cutting-edge science of the Nazi Party was distributed between the two ruling political systems in the world, communism and capitalism. This was the beginning of the breakaway civilization I discussed in the previous chapter. The knowledge and the science inherited from the Nazi Party was so overwhelming that secret divisions of an as of yet unnamed intelligence agency were created. The OSS became the CIA in 1947, with parts of the OSS continuing on autonomously for some time afterwards, but the bulk of intelligence went to the CIA. Cynthia's father was approached by officers of the OSS to be part of a very secret government project. He signed back up with the army to work for the project with the OSS, a project so secret that Cynthia herself was not told until her mid-30s. Her father then told her that she was a human hybrid being created in an OSS program with deoxyribonucleic acid from two different alien races combined with human DNA. Now, most people, when they hear this kind of information, immediately jump to a bad and evil government position. This is the basis of an entire culture of conspiracy theory which has evolved in the last few decades, especially spiking after September 11th, 2001. And becoming a louder and louder voice, not only in America, but in other parts of the world as well. As I said earlier in my story, the human race has a collective unconscious, and they can be lied to for only so long before something very disturbing starts to dominate their consciousness. It doesn't mean that they have all the answers. They can't go to court and make a case against the government, but at a very fundamental level, everybody knows that they're being lied to now. Hollywood has received a lot of its ideas from the intelligence world, and this is not just a question of keeping the public informed. The intelligence world knows what I'm telling you. They know we live within a collective consciousness. By letting the information out under the classification of fiction, they are able to release some of the pressure building up in the human unconscious. It is, as described in an earlier chapter, a false catharsis, an extraction of all the negative and toxic emotions that are building up in the human consciousness through a two-dimensional picture projected onto a movie screen. They also started up the mind control and mind strengthening programs that fall under the umbrella of MKUltra. These were begun with the CIA through a satellite office that operated out of McGill Hospital University in Montreal, Canada. All of this is verifiable. The Canadian authorities have gone through class action suits by the survivors of the original programs. My point in bringing all of this up is that we saw something in World War II through our engagement with the Nazis that changed the way we think about our reality forever. The only problem is that experience was not universal for the whole human race. Had it been universal, we might be living in a very different society now, one humbled by the reality that we're not alone in the solar system, the Milky Way galaxy, or the trillions of galaxies that exist. So much changed in World War II that an entire history has to be written for the last 75 years. The history we have now is pretty much entirely a lie, except for a certain spot-on dates like the bombing of Dresden or the bombing of London. The motivations for that war and the forces at play in that war have never been revealed to the human race. Nor has it been revealed that we did not win World War II. It just sort of ended when the Nazi establishment went to Antarctica. You could say that the modern exopolitical world begins with what was harvested from the Nazis through Project Paperclip. The first questions that we could ask about Miss Crawford are, where did the OSS come up with 2 different types of alien DNA, and why was the OSS, which was tasked with the intelligence during World War II, the holder of alien DNA at the end of World War II? All of these questions I can't answer. I'm only bringing these things into my story to help you understand the UFO phenomenon, and at a certain point in this story, we're going to hit the crossroads, we're going to hit the point of the story, and you need to understand these details, and you need to understand when the actual exopolitical reality became such a focus in the intelligence communities in the world. As a toddler, Cynthia was routinely visiting medical facilities that were run clandestinely underground by the military. She went through a battery of examinations. She would later recall a host of alien abductions, examinations, impregnations, as well as miraculous healings and organ replacements. For the 50s and into the 70s, she desperately tried to understand her experiences, but there was nothing similar being talked about in the public back then. It's sometimes difficult for us, in the first quarter of the new millennium, to imagine a world without the internet and any question we have being reasonably answered in a matter of seconds, but that was life back then. It must have been hard for her to go through her ordeal alone, factoring in as well her need to talk about these things and how these things would be greeted by the uninitiated. She was very often viewed as completely insane. She had psychic abilities. It wasn't until she faced these otherworldly beings that she transcended her fear, and it was then that she learned that they in fact were her family. From that she awakened to her mission and why she had been brought to this planet in the first place. Confused yet? What do you think the last part means? Why she came to this planet? What came to this planet? She was born of 3 different kinds of DNA mixed together, 2 alien and 1 human part, but she claims that she came to this planet. This is an important point in the alien narrative, and it also is a point at which the story gets very esoteric. Deoxyribonucleic acid has to be in a frequency with the astral form that is going to incarnate into. Now I need you to stop here for a moment. So many things in our religious and spiritual traditions can be explained with the addition of the alien narrative and what it has taught us. When the Vedic, Buddhist, Sikh teachers and others tell us that karma is infallible and that nobody can escape the consequences of their actions or the benefits, they are referring to this relationship between DNA and frequency. A frequency is a composition of thoughts and feelings. There's probably a much better word than frequency, but I can't think of it. No matter how comfortable a dark human being seems to be with their actions, a mafia enforcer, a vicious police officer, a corrupt politician, and anyone else you can think of, a part of them is recording everything, and a part of them is not in concert with what they are doing. The true nature of all sentient beings is to give, but this has to be learned over time through incarnations. Each and every time we live a life where we become very self-centered and damaging to the people around us, there's a sleeping part of us that knows everything that we're doing and records it, and when we die, we are reminded of it. When we incarnate, we seek an incarnation that will rectify the imbalance. We seek atonement. There are no dark forces controlling us on the other side, at least not as it pertains to the original construction of the Creator. We judge ourselves. This is why forgiveness is such an important part of spiritual traditions. You are literally saying you do not want to be part of a karmic cycle that is going to draw you back into circumstances in the future. You are willing to absorb the pain and the injustice that has been done to you, which might well be the result of injustice you did in a past life, and you are willing to move on. For the greater good, you forgive. And according to Cynthia, she came to Earth on a mission of greater good. She came here on a spiritual mission. To fulfill that mission, she had to go through all kinds of mental and physical suffering. She chose to do all of that. So the alien DNA was to bring her in as a spiritual being, to bring an alien vibration into a human atmosphere. It couldn't be done any other way. Now stop and think for a moment about Christ. His frequency was angelic if his father was the Archangel Gabriel. I don't recall meeting Cynthia, but I did. It might have been in the early 2000s at some kind of UFO meetup. I had started making the rounds in the new millennium, and my story was well known. But I had not spoken with Cynthia for a number of years, so long in fact that I didn't recall meeting her when I was first told it was she who paid for Dr. Brandy Howell to come to my ranch and try and aid me. It wasn't until many years later, 2017 to be exact, that I would see Cynthia Crawford again. She came out to the ranch to visit me. She had 3 large tumours in her brain. She knew she was going to die. I was one of the last people that she would see before she left this world. She died a couple of days after visiting me at the ranch. I'm eternally grateful to this day for what she did for me. It was such a comfort to meet her, to have someone understand what I had been going through at the ranch, and to better understand myself and why I'd gone through all these experiences I had. We choose our lives. We sign up for them before we are born. A friend of mine once told me that on the other side, history is written from the future backwards. In the Sufi cosmology, there should be a galactic soul, a way of describing oneself as a being that has had life in the universe, not just the Earth. Perhaps they lack the language. Cynthia was a galactic soul. Her consciousness had memory and knowledge of herself as a galactic being. She made it abundantly clear to me my mission was to tell the world what was going on at my ranch. It was time they knew. I am fulfilling that promise to her and myself. End of chapter 16.
Wow. Sometimes I can hardly believe I wrote that book. And to Fingerman, there's a lot of how the sausage is made in that chapter and in all the books, which is why when I'm not writing a book, I just don't like to think about it that much. It's part of a deconstructive mindset, and I try to stay within a holistic mindset, a wholeness. And you can see how these two ways of existing, these two modalities of being, the Western and the Eastern, although everything is the same now with the technology spread across the planet, but you know what I mean. It was us in the West who started the culture of deconstruction and dissection, right down to the atom. Energy from matter. Second phase of that equation is matter from energy. Whether they've done that or not yet, I don't know. I suspect possibly, like 50, 60%, I'd say probably they have, which means they could form matter instantly from energy. And that was the equation given to John Dee and Edward Kelly, court magicians. Now, the reason I played that chapter and what is important to remember is that the human-alien hybrid is a real phenomenon. I'm going to repeat that because sometimes repeating things is necessary. The human-alien hybrid is a real phenomenon. And you have to note the timing of it all. 1947, that pivotal year, probably the most eventful year in human history for some time, maybe ever. And then we get another big formation year in 1972. There may be other pivot years. I haven't quite figured them out yet. Maybe I could do a little bit of research on the early 90s, because in the early 90s, all of the banks associated with the IMF went from a 1 to 10 or a 1 to 5 reserve to fluidity ratio. You guys know what that means, right? I don't have to explain everything. Or do I? Maybe I should. If you have if you're in a 5 to 1 ratio for reserves to issued capital that the bank has issued as loans. So if it's a 1 to 4 ratio, the bank can have $1 million out on the street if it has $250,000 in reserve. Now the money system, so, all right, this is a whole other podcast. I keep doing this like I'm an idiot, like a dog chasing a bone on these podcasts. I gotta stay focused. So 47 was a really pivotal year. We get Roswell, which is the public announcement of the extraterrestrial presence. It doesn't matter that the government tried to deny it and cover it up. The fact that it got out is the public disclosure. Okay? You get the National Security Act. You get the formation of Israel, MI6, and the CIA. The CIA and MI6 and Israel all being direct outgrowths of the brain trust that was the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, which was the military intelligence, which Henry Kissinger was connected to. Okay? I dare say, as I just talk aloud here, I would be surprised if there's a podcast out there getting it more right than the Talamanca Review. It's amazing to me how people love amusing stories, you know? Like the big podcasters, they always do amusing stories, right? They'll do a podcast on UFOs, like Joe Rogan just interviewed Hal Puthoff last week, okay? You'll get podcasts with religious people talking about entities and demons and an invisible world that interacts with human beings. You'll get podcasts that focus on cryptids, Dogman, Bigfoot, maybe a little bit of gray alien stuff as well. You'll get purely political podcasts like the Duran, like Redacted doing news. You know, Clayton and Natalie Morris, one of my favorite alternative news sites. Although I find them a tad hyperbolic in the headlines, real end of the world stuff. But you got to sell, right? You got to get that bait out there, the bait line. But what I aim to do on the Talamanca Review is tie it all together for you. To give you the story. To tell you what's really going on down here. So yesterday we talked about Phil Schneider and the horrible price he paid, martyrdom really, for humanity and getting a message out. And don't worry about Phil. Phil will be rewarded for that. That stuff goes noticed. It does not go unnoticed. Okay? And I'm not trying to tell you that you should be seeking suffering in your physical existence. I seek as much comfort as possible, which is why I cut the sleeves off old shirts. My brother-in-law Gerardo taught me this trick. I said, Gerardo, why do you cut the sleeves off your shirts? He goes, it's more comfortable. Más confortable, Bruce. He was a huge man, 300 pounds, strong as a bear. He helped build this house. And there's follow-up information about Cynthia and the effect she had on people with the busts that she sculpted. I've talked about that. I'm not going to redo that in this podcast. But really, I think the most important thing to take in here is that the alien-human hybrid thing is real. And it raises a lot of questions. It is entirely possible, and don't bite my head off here, it is entirely possible that some of the gray aliens are humans that have been transfigured. Remember what Phil Schneider said. A lot of those children go underground and they're experimented on. And remember what else Phil Schneider said, right out of the Nazi death camps. Right? Why did he say that? He was a German American, by the way. Well, he said that because that's what the Germans were doing. So the Germans had made this extraterrestrial contact as well. Now, any extraterrestrial race that would come here and do these things in partnership with enclaves of human beings, cabals of human beings, they're also violating cosmic law. It is an act of desperation. Many of the negative extraterrestrial races that have come to have a tremendous influence on this planet could be looked upon as cosmic crackheads, just the way a crackhead becomes a nuisance to a community in Los Angeles or New York, or at times even on this mountain. The cosmic community, the negative extraterrestrials, are the crackheads. You heard what Phil Schneider said. They taught us adrenochrome. They taught, hey man, you guys want to get high? Did you know that you guys secrete things in your bodies that will make you extremely high? Take you to another world, man. You want to try it? Gee, that sounds interesting. I'd like to try it. Okay, just get me a 7-year-old child that I can terrorize for 3 days before I extract their adrenal gland and squeeze out the adrenochrome. Well, you would think a normal human being would say, no, I can't do that. But we are in a time of great transgression. If decency is the line, if goodness is the line, and if love is the line, then we're falling way short of that. It's hard even for me at times to imagine what level of desperation could produce behavior like that, or what lust for power could produce behavior like that. Now, I want you to think about all of the people out there who are probably adrenochrome users. John and Tony Podesta. Probably Bill Clinton. Although I don't know, because Clinton is alleged to have had a wicked cocaine habit. But that could be a cover story. I don't know. I think Hillary Clinton's on the adrenochrome. I think that Serbian witch who claims to be an artist, Maria Abramovich, is definitely on the adrenochrome. Now you gotta remember what the Talamanca Review is trying to get across to you. I've told you many times, this goes back to my earlier podcasts when I started. And I'm kind of, in a way, I'm kind of circling back a little bit now. But looking at things with fresh eyes and new information as it comes in. And I'm so receptive to that information, and I know exactly where the piece goes in the puzzle. It's not just a random piece of clickbait like how most people would watch the 9.5-minute video of Phil Schneider from yesterday. This is also part of what the demons wanted me to convey to humanity and the devil in us. That, look, hey man, we're not claiming we're the greatest beings in existence, but we were given our positions, we were given our roles, our functions, our duties, and our responsibilities. And we have not violated our relationship with God. You need to take a look at what human beings are doing with other sentient hominids not native to this planet to understand why this planet is so far off track. And there's people out there who can take all of this information in. Not all of it, not to the degree that I'm detailing it, but aspects of it, and go, yeah, these extraterrestrials are demons. They're demons masquerading as beings from other planets. Yeah, I don't think so. I think it just is what it is. And the reason they can't accept it is that it upsets their religious apple cart, their belief system. People do not like having their sacred cows tipped over. I don't enjoy tipping over people's sacred cows, but it seems to me that so much is at stake now that anything has to be attempted, and old definitions of offense need to be thrown out the window so that a greater truth can come through. Now, we talk a lot as well in the Talamanca Review about universal law and how it works, and it's real. And even something much more intelligent and powerful than a human being might not outright violate a human being and their divine or cosmic rights, their universal rights as a living sentient being, out of fear of repercussion from the great balance in the cosmos. Now, that sense of balance has been destroyed by pseudo-contracts, and these contracts were signed by very nefarious elements in the US government and the British government and what went on to become Israel. That's the triumvirate right there. Okay? The Vatican is an adjunct, and that's why they're mocking the death of the Pope now. Okay? You have to have the right eyes to read what's going on in the world right now. London City will probably fall next, and America will be last, if this plan goes forward. So we can assume that there's been a strong influence coming out of Jewish culture that is part of this alien agenda. And that's why tying Henry Kissinger to it was such an integral part of it for me. But it's not Judaism. It's not a Torah Jew fasting. It's not a Torah Jew doing Shiva. It's not a Torah Jew doing a shul, a prayer group. It's not a Torah Jew going to Friday prayers. It's not a Torah Jew atoning for their sins. It's something that snuck into Judaism. Just like something snuck into the Vatican. Just like something snuck into Protestantism. With Protestantism being the most obvious one. It was Masonry that snuck into Protestantism, which is Judaism for Gentiles. And it all centers around this culture of the Kabbalah. All of the secret societies. And the Kabbalah does not represent all Jews. In fact, most Jews think it should not be studied. I should be careful saying most, I don't know that for sure. But I've seen many YouTube videos with sincere Torah Jews talking about how the study of the Kabbalah corrupts the heart. I'm taking the time to explain this very carefully so that my truth doesn't fall prey to the label of anti-Semitism, because I don't want that label on me. And I don't think this situation deserves it. But at the same time, it's hard to avoid talking about the Jewish or rabbinical influence on this. Very hard. Now here's the final part. This is what ties it all together, okay? Get ready for this. Well, you know what? Before we do that, let's take a look at those cats again. The video of these kittens is for the Talamanca Review listener, Kitty. Sweetie, I don't want to... I don't want to bother you, Mummy, but I gotta get the kittens here. Why don't you lie down when you feed? Okay, I'm gonna leave you be, okay? I know I'm bothering you. Third day of motherhood. But this is like her, I think her third litter. And this is the other litter. You can see the 3 kittens much more clearly there. She decided to birth in an old washing machine we have here. And I don't like to bother them when they're feeding. The mothers get a little bit irritated, but there's my niece Isabelita. Isabelita! Dice hello. My sister-in-law, her mother. Están bien. Her soul. A little bit of my life up here on the mountain. It's just, that's my day by day as I prepare for these podcasts. And nobody here really knows what I do or what I talk about. It's like kind of weird, right? Because I live in Spanish up here. Weird. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground tonight. And remember, the title of tonight's program or podcast is Uniform Control Redux. So I came across another one of those short 9 or 10 minute videos on X today, and they seem to be just dropping into my lap. I don't think it has anything to do with an algorithm. But this answers a lot of questions that we as a collectivity asked in the Uniform Control podcast. So let's give it a watch here.
This man's name is Joseph Spencer. This interview in 1989. He was dying, and he actually died the following year in 1990. It's the only time he's ever talked about this on camera. It's about 14 minutes long, and I'll just show you a few clips. But he's ex-CIA, and more importantly, he claims to be ex-Men in Black. And just check out what he's saying here.
This transition in my life happened in 1970. The senior black project director was William T. Latham, who had worked under CIA Executive Director Richard Schlesinger. Latham stated that I was the perfect candidate for my new position. I was a foster child, and I had no connections to existing relatives. I had no friends or social life. It was easy for them to erase my past and provide me with a new identity. I gave myself to them as a priest would to his God. But first, my mind had to be erased. I was injected with various forms of mind-altering drugs, LSD, heroin, mescaline, morphine, sodium pentothal, and more. Drug-induced hypnosis followed with antegrade and retrograde amnesia. The goal was to program me to do 2 things: kill and forget. After 9 months of programming, I had become a man in black. What I later discovered was that not all the men in black were human. About a third were alien hybrids. Their distinctive feature was the absence of whites in their eyes, giving the impression of empty eye sockets. This unsettled me, and it took months to adjust to the reality of alien integration. My assignments largely dealt with UFO sightings and crash sites. In August of 1971, I witnessed my first UFO crash site just north of Edwards Air Force Base in California. Inside the craft were 3 grade humanoids, 2 dead, 1 still alive. Also in the craft was a human female abductee. The alien humanoids were transported to the base, but 2 witnesses had arrived before us and took several photographs. The first surrendered his camera, but the second fled. When we apprehended him, he resisted, and I was ordered to silence him, which I did. The killing of witnesses was executed with a wand that acted very much like today's taser. But the voltage from the wand would cause immediate cardiac arrest, and the victim's death would be attributed to natural causes. We silenced countless victims, not only men, but women of all ages and even teenagers. The following day, after each kill, our memories were reset, so we would have no recollection of the murders. A good majority of the victims were ufologists and whistleblowers. Among the ufologists I personally silenced were Paul William Cooper, Milton Vigay, Claude Monroe, Anthony Vargas, and noted documentarian Samantha Willis. When my wand malfunctioned with Samantha, I resorted to strangulation. She fought for her life for almost 2 minutes. In recalling this act, I stared into her pleading eyes for the entire duration with absolutely no remorse, guilt, or feelings. That was how effective the mind conditioning was. And it's her face that haunts my dreams more than anyone's to this day.
So they stuffed out a documentarian.
Yep.
Well, that's not good to hear.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on. In 1954, Dwight Eisenhower signed what's known as the Granada Treaty with the alien gray race. In exchange for shared alien technologies, the Greys were allowed to abduct a number of humans annually for medical examination. The Greys also demanded anonymity from the public. A short time later, human technology took a giant leap forward with circuit chips, fiber optics, and lasers. The Granada Treaty is still active today, but the number of human abductions has increased, despite objections from the world governments. Now, the really interesting part. Every year, at least 8 million children go missing in the world. I can attest that 1/3 of them are abducted by government operatives and transported to any one of the 1,477 underground military installations on the planet, then imprisoned for the remainder of their lives. The children are subjected to biological and genetic experiments, dissections, and mutilations performed not by human scientists, but an alien gray species. During my stay at the Vanguard Underground Base north of Phoenix, Arizona, I witnessed many of these procedures. Because there was no form of anesthesia administered to the young patients, the halls reverberated with the screams of tortured children from morning to night. The ones that perished were incinerated in the installation's crematoriums. My point of contact at this base was Lieutenant Colonel Charles T. Leninger, and he was a human-alien hybrid. And get ready for this. In 1994, the World Population Summit in Cairo, Egypt, had 160 nations participate, where they all agreed that the human population was out of control and must be stopped because the world is running out of resources. An agreement was formed that would mandate the reduction of humans from 6 billion to 800 million by the year 2030. This meant finding a method or methods to wipe out nearly 95% of the population. Solutions were discovered, investigated, tested, then created, and have been in full force since. The procedures have been inflicted onto the human race are as follows. 1. Toxic levels of chemically enhanced fluoride have been secretly added to our drinking water over the last 20 years in every city and community on the planet. I personally oversaw the delivery of fluoride barrels to Denver, Chicago, Tampa, and Minneapolis water departments. The adverse effects of fluoride poisoning to the human body are numerous and debilitating. The effects to children is damage to their neurological development, among other serious ailments. 2. Man-made viruses and diseases. The AIDS virus, which was a designer byproduct of the American Disease Institute, was distributed through vaccines to the public in 1980. Instituted as a preliminary population control tactic, the results were successful and led to more lab-produced viruses that have since been unleashed onto the public. Among those is the development of a mutated version of the common flu to replicate the 1918 influenza pandemic that killed 40 million people. The first strain of this new flu virus will be released to the public in late 2017. So if we see a flu outbreak in the late 2017 or early 2018 that's killing people, we'll know this is true.
All right.
3. Killing us from the air with neurotoxins, barium chloride, cancer microbes, and viruses by way of chemtrails, released into the skies daily over all inhabited regions by military aircrafts. The effects of these toxins are severe and over time lethal, causing respiratory ailments, cancer, damage to the immune systems, and sterilization in men. Since the chemtrail plan was implemented, sperm count in men has dropped nearly 50%. If this isn't reversed soon, the human race will face early extinction.
How about those kittens? Is he telling the truth? Yes, that guy is telling the truth. He's not lying. Okay? Phil Schneider was not lying. These are men who went through diabolical programs, but they were not spiritually destroyed. And toward the end of their life, they want to reconnect and reassert their humanity. Although Phil Schneider never went through diabolical programs, but that gentleman did. Now, what's interesting about what he said? Now, he died in 1989, and so by about 1970, 1/3 of the men in black were alien-human hybrids. So they started this hybridization program, and they used the children to do this. And this is being done because an element of our own species, we human beings, has betrayed us and let this vermin, this cosmic vermin, into our biosphere and into our psychosphere. I wouldn't even want to take a guess at how many of the men in black are alien-human hybrids now, and what those alien-human hybrids can do. We get the story from John Edmonds from about, I think, 2000 and... No, I think it's the late 90s, early 2000s, the men in black come to visit him. Because he started talking publicly on websites about what was going on at his ranch. And they passed right through the metal gate at the end of his driveway. Like phased through it. You know, Star Trek style. One can only wonder how much of this negative consciousness is influencing even our religions on the planet today, up to and including the New Age religions, new religious movements. Certainly the old religions at the top tier are captured. Now, it's not just that they take you over. You have to be morally corrupt to get sucked into their world. And then once there, it's hard to get out, because you cross a line where you forfeit your humanity. And to rat them out is to say you want your humanity back. But when the rest of the human race finds out what you did when you cross that line, 99 out of 100 people will say, no, thank you. We don't want you back. You're not human anymore. A human being would not have done what you did. I would say avoid that judgment if your heart tells you the repentant, the penitent person who wants back into the human collective as a growing spiritual being, a product of the Creator. I would say forgive them. I know that's an extreme thing to say, especially from a guy who most days can't forgive his brother-in-law. I realize the hypocritic tightwire I'm walking here. But I do forgive my brother-in-law. But we need to forgive them. We need to forgive them if they want to come back, because they will end up being very powerful forces in overcoming what we're up against. Sun Tzu said that the greatest weapon in any war are the spies, the people who know the layout of the enemy's camp. So we can't be so judgmental. Many of the people who have slipped into this dark world did it in a manner in which they might not have been fully conscious. They may have gone to an island in the hopes of having a wonderful evening with a beautiful woman 15 or 20 years younger than them, as beautiful as a model, and then they have something dropped in their drink or in their food. They're not themselves, and they end up in a bedroom with a 9-year-old girl who was either birthed or raised underground from the age of 3 or 4, trained to do what she does. All of it is videotaped. And voila, he's trapped. She's trapped, because it works on women too. It's a tough ask to forgive. It's a very tough ask, but I'm asking. Now, as to the alien-human hybrid story, let's ask ourselves aloud on the Talamanca Review. Do you think it's invaded the corporations, the banks, our governments? Well, the chief characteristic or signature of this culture, which is inherited from the reptilians, which are above the greys in this underworld hierarchy, literally underworld. The hallmark of their culture is ritual, and they absolutely love obsidian stone, the black stone of volcanic rock, because it polishes almost as smooth as a mirror, and it's a stone. If you've seen the movie Apocalypto, many of the weapons that the jungle warriors use, if you see black at the top, that's obsidian stone, because you can cut it to a point where it's almost as sharp as a razor. This black stone this black rock has been around for quite a while. It's hard to conceive of everything that's going on around us as an alien takeover. But you must also admit that the more I inform you, the harder it is to deny. This has been Uniform Control Redux. I'm Bruce McDonald, Talamanca Review.